At 78 years old, most people long for a peaceful home surrounded by grandchildren, but I am enjoying my most tranquil days behind the bars of a California state prison. For 70 years, from the moment I was 8 and she broke my favorite doll just to see me cry, until the night of our 70th birthday, I lived in a bond that felt more like a life sentence than sisterhood. It wasn't a traditional marriage, but it was a union of shadow and soul that I couldn't escape. People looked at us and saw two old ladies leaning on each other, symbols of sisterly devotion. They had no idea that beneath that fragile facade lay a cruel scheme that stole the man I loved, stole my future, and turned me into a ghost for half a century. On the night of our 70th birthday, a horrific truth was revealed through her triumphant smile, a truth so dark it shattered 70 years of silence. In that moment, I realized that these hands that only knew how to sew, had to perform one final, desperate task to set us both free. If you are listening from anywhere in the world, please leave a comment and subscribe, because there are truths that need to be spread, even if they shake your very foundation. There are stories that, no matter how painful, must be told. It's been 8 years now since I've been here at the Central California Women's Facility in Chowchilla. 22 years is what the judge gave me. If I survive, I'll be 92 when I get out. But you know what? For the first time in my life, I sleep alone. And I sleep well. I sleep like a rock, without having to hear someone else's breathing next to me, without feeling that invisible weight that suffocated me for 7 decades. We always celebrated birthdays together because we were twins, right? There was no way to separate us. I called it the platinum anniversary of our prison with each other. 70 years trapped in the same bedroom, the same house, the same life that was never really mine. I never married, never left home, never separated from her, not even for a single day. And now, look at the irony. I'm separated from her forever. Only this time, I was the one who chose it. You look at me now, and what do you see? A 7-8-year-old woman, tiny, hunched over, looking like I'm past my expiration date. My skin was once a sun-kissed tan from years of working the fields under the harsh Georgia sun. Now it's faded, full of brown spots I call old lady freckles. My face is long, my cheeks are hollow, and these wrinkles around my mouth look like a barcode because I spent my whole life keeping quiet. My eyes are black, so dark they look bottomless, small and deep-set, with heavy eyelids like someone who's always calculating, always suspicious. They say my gaze is scary, maybe it is. After 70 years of looking at my sister's face every night before bed, I learned to see things normal people don't. My hair was dark brown when I was young. Now it's a yellowish white, like old straw, cut short and messy because in prison, nobody gives you a fancy hairstyle. There's a bald patch here on the left side. See? Hair hasn't grown there since I was 45. Clara ripped it out in a clump during a fight over some nonsense I don't even remember anymore. But that hole in my hair stayed to remind me every day in the mirror who was sleeping next to me. And this scar on my right eyebrow that's even older, from when I was 12, another gift from Clara. She shoved me against the corner of the oak dresser because I was chosen to wear a blue dress to the Sunday school formal. I got the scar, she got the dress. That's how it always was between us. These hands, look at them, long and thin. Pianist's fingers, my mother used to say. Except I never played the piano. We didn't have the dollars for that. What these hands did was sew, wash, iron, cook, and care. And on a night in March 2016, these hands held a pillow against my sister's face until she stopped moving. My right hand shakes a little now, a leftover from a stroke I had in my 5th year of prison. But it still works, still sews, still does what it needs to do. And when I look at them before bed, I don't feel remorse. I feel relief, because these hands finally did something just for me. For the first time in 70 years, those hands, once bound by the invisible threads of Clara's demands, finally felt the weight of their own power. In that suffocating silence of our shared bedroom, the softness of the pillow felt like the only mercy I could offer to both of us. It wasn't just an act of vengeance. It was a final, desperate divorce from a soul that had grafted itself onto mine without my consent. You know what's funny? We were identical twins, same face, same body, same height, but everyone always said I was the pretty one. Not that Clara was ugly, far from it. It's just that there was something in her expression that was harder, more closed off, like there was a stone behind her eyes. I smiled more, I think, or smiled differently. To this day, I only smile with one corner of my mouth, never a full smile. I learned early to hide my joy, because if Clara saw I was happy about something, she'd find a way to ruin it. So I learned to keep everything inside, not to show it, not to let her notice. The guards here say I arrived looking wrecked and got better over time. In the first few months, I looked like a ghost, too thin, too pale, with eyes like someone who'd already died inside. Little by little, I came back. I gained color. I straightened my back. You know what I think? The weight of carrying another person on my back, my whole life finally fell off. It left my shoulders. It left my face. It left my chest. I spent 70 years being half of something I never asked to be. Now I am whole. For the first time, it's just me. Tell me in the comments your name and where you're listening from, because I spent 70 years without being able to tell this story to anyone. Clara was always listening, always in the same room, always in the same house. If I said something to a neighbor, she'd find out. If I complained to a cousin, she'd find out. No secret lasted more than a day in that house. Now that I have my own voice for the first time, now that I can speak without fear of her hearing, I want to know who the people are listening to what she never let me say. So tell me your name and where you're from. I want to know who's on the other side of this story. We were born in 1946 on a tobacco farm near Georgia, in a region of the South that used to be wealthy. A farm that was once rich, had workers, made money. When Clara and I were born, it was just the remains, the crumbs, the shell of something that was once beautiful. My father used to brag that the Harrison family once owned land as far as the eye could see. But the only thing I could see as a girl was the dust in the yard and the peeling walls. Bankrupt aristocracy. That's what we were. A big house with high ceilings to hide the poverty. Antique furniture we couldn't sell because it was an heirloom. Patched clothes under our Sunday dresses. We pretended to be rich for others and went hungry in private. My father was a retired colonel, one of those men who lived off his rank and his pride, too proud to work, to lower himself, to admit the world had changed, and a bankrupt farmer was the same as a nobody. The money that was left, which was little, he spent on bourbon. He'd drink on the porch, looking at the dead fields, remembering times gone by, complaining about the government, prices, life. He didn't hit us. He wasn't that type, but he didn't look at us either. To him, Clara and I were one thing. The twins. He never bothered to learn the difference. He died of a heart attack when we were 25, drinking on the porch as usual. Nobody cried much. My mother, Grace, was a different story. A small, fragile woman who lived on appearances and fear. Fear of what others would think. Fear of being shamed. Fear of admitting the family had fallen. She sewed for others behind my father's back because he thought it was a humiliation for his wife to work. She made dresses for the women in town, fixed old clothes, embroidered bridal veils. I learned from her, sitting next to her at the Singer sewing machine, watching those fast fingers move the thread, making the needle dance. Clara never had the patience for that. She wanted to sell, to control the money, to know what was coming in and going out. From the time we were little, it was like that. I created, she controlled. When we were born, my mother said I came out first smiling, and Clara came after crying, as if she already knew she'd have to share everything with someone. Mom repeated that story all the time, thinking it was funny, not realizing she was planting a bad seed. We had an older brother, Samuel, who left the farm as soon as he could breathe on his own, fleeing the suffocating atmosphere Clara created. He died years ago, leaving behind the daughters who still occasionally visit me. Because from then on, I was the good one, and Clara was the difficult one. I was the one who smiled, who obeyed, who didn't cause trouble. And Clara was the one who cried, complained, bit, and scratched when she didn't get what she wanted. But you know what nobody noticed? Clara always got what she wanted in the end. Always. One way or another, she found a way. We shared a room since birth. 2 twin beds side by side, with a nightstand in the middle. I slept in the bed on the left, near the window, and Clara on the right, near the door. I never questioned it, never asked to switch, never suggested we each have our own space. It was as if the possibility didn't even exist. Until we were 15, Clara had nightmares every night and would wake me up crying, calling me, wanting me to come to her bed and pet her hair until she fell asleep again. I went every time tired, sleepy. But I went because she was my twin, because we were born together, because it was what was expected of me. Mom treated us like one person split in two. She never called us by name. It was always the twins. She sewed identical clothes for us until we were 30, believe it or not. Same dress, same color, same pattern. If one got shoes, the other got the same ones. If one cut her hair, the other had to cut hers too. There was no identity, no individuality, no me and her. There were the twins, this two-headed creature that could never be separated. And Clara, oh, Clara loved it. Because that way, I'd never have anything just mine. Everything I had, she had too. Everything I was, she was too. I was her property as much as I was her sister. For years, I felt my own reflection in the mirror fading, replaced by a blurred image of us. I stopped asking what I wanted for dinner, what color I liked, or what dreams I still held. Clara's voice became the internal monologue in my head, criticizing my every move before I even made it. I wasn't just living with a sister. I was living inside a cage made of her expectations and my own misplaced loyalty. Perhaps you're wondering, how could I be so weak? But you see, when your wings are clipped in the cradle and you're raised to believe twins are one, freedom starts to feel like a sin. I wasn't living a life. I was just learning to endure a life sentence without a trial, served in a cell called family duty. This slow erosion of self is a silent tragedy that many endure, a quiet drowning in the shallow waters of family duty. I got a diary when I turned 10. An aunt from Dallas gave it to me small, with a brown leather cover and a gold clasp. It was the first thing that was only mine in my whole life. I hid it under my mattress. I wrote at night when Clara was asleep, by the moonlight coming through the window. I wrote for a week, telling my secrets, my dreams, the things I wanted to be when I grew up. On the 7th day, I came home and found Clara in the backyard, sitting on a bench, reading my diary out loud to the chickens, laughing, using a mocking voice. The chickens would cluck, and she'd read, "Amelia wants to marry a prince and live in a castle." And she'd laugh and laugh. I never wrote anything again. I made a friend at school, Sarah, a quiet girl who sat next to me in class and lent me colored pencils. We played at recess, traded stickers, planned to visit each other over break. A week later, Sarah stopped talking to me. I found out Clara had spread a rumor at school that Sarah had lice. A lie, of course. But back then, lice were a social death sentence. The girl was isolated. Other mothers forbade their daughters from going near her, and Sarah never looked at my face again. I lost my only friend because of a lie my sister invented, and when I asked Clara why she did it, she just shrugged and said, "You don't need friends. You have me. You have me." In any other story, those words might be a comfort, but here they sound like a prison door slamming shut. It's heart-wrenching to watch Clara systematically dismantle every piece of Amelia's world, her privacy, her friendships, and eventually, her very sense of self. It makes you wonder, at what point does sisterly love turn into a life sentence? Don't look away now, because as Amelia grows older, the stakes become a matter of life, death, and a love that was never meant to be broken. At 14, I was invited to a classmate's birthday party, a party at her house with cake, soda, and music. I was so excited. It was the first time I'd been invited to something alone, without Clara. I spent the week thinking about what I'd wear, the gift I'd bring. On the day, I woke up ready dressed, hair done, and Clara went downstairs first and told my mother I'd woken up with a stomachache, that I was sick and couldn't go. My mother didn't even come to ask me. She sent word to the girl that I wasn't going, and Clara didn't go either. Of course, because if I couldn't have it, she wouldn't let me have it. That was the unspoken rule of our existence, a pattern of theft that defined my youth. The scar on my eyebrow came from those times. Mom had sewn one beautiful blue dress for a church social, but there was only time to make one. She said she'd draw lots to see who would wear it. I won. Clara got so angry I saw her eyes change color. That night, when I was getting ready in front of the bedroom mirror, she came up behind me, grabbed my hair, and pulled with all her might. My head hit the corner of the oak dresser, blood running down, my mother screaming, my father drunk on the porch not even noticing. And Clara stood there looking like a saint, saying I'd tripped on my own, that she hadn't done anything, that it was an accident. My mother believed her, like she always did. I went to the party with a bandage on my forehead, and Clara went too, wearing the blue dress that was mine. Because in the end, she always got what she wanted. My father died of a heart attack when we were 25. He was drinking on the porch as usual and suddenly fell out of his chair and didn't get up. They called a doctor, but by the time he arrived, it was too late. My mother cried more out of shame than sadness, I think. The widow of a bankrupt colonel in a town where everyone knew everyone. She lasted another 10 years until we were 35. Poorly managed diabetes, complication after complication. The last months were hard, me, taking care of her day and night, giving her medicine, changing bandages, making special food. Clara helped sometimes, when she felt like it. My mother died in her sleep, at least, and then it was just the two of us. Two single women in a house too big, too old, too empty. We never talked about separating, about each going our own way, about living our own lives. It was as if the possibility didn't exist, as if we'd been born stuck together and would die stuck together. We lived off my father's pension and the money I made sewing. I made the clothes. Clara sold them. I created the dresses, blouses, and arrangements, and Clara went to people's houses to offer them. She negotiated prices, collected from clients. I never saw the full amount of money, only what she gave me. And I accepted it, because it had always been that way, because I didn't know any different. The room stayed the same. 2 twin beds, nightstand in the middle, me on the left by the window, her on the right, controlling the door. We developed old lady routines before we were 40. Coffee at 6 a.m., sewing until lunch, a nap, the evening news, dinner, bed at 9. Every single day, the same as the last. Years and years and years. I dreamed of traveling, of seeing the ocean I'd never seen, of leaving that house, even if only for a week. Every time I spoke of it, Clara cut me off. It's dangerous. It's expensive. It's nonsense. And I swallowed the dream, tucked it back in the drawer, promised myself that one day I'd find a way. But the day never came. The neighbors called us the Harrison Spinsters. It wasn't with malice. It was with pity. 2 old ladies who never married, never had kids, never left that crumbling house. Poor things, they must have thought. What they didn't know was that only one of us was truly a poor thing. The other was the reason the poor thing existed. The year was 1966. We had just turned 20. The world was different, and I still believed life could be different from what it was. That was when Thomas appeared. Thomas Miller, the son of a pharmacist from Austin, 24 years old, a recent accounting graduate. He came to our town to work at the county clerk's office. He rented a room at Mrs. Reed's boarding house on the street above the church. The first time I saw him was at Sunday Mass. I dropped my lace headscarf, and he caught it. He handed it back with a smile I'd never seen anyone give me. It wasn't a polite smile. It was a smile of interest, of wanting to know, of seeing. He had light, honey-colored eyes that sparkled when the sun hit them, wavy brown hair. He combed to the side with pomade, and he wore a fountain pen in his breast pocket, one of those with a gold nib that I thought was the most elegant thing in the world. He looked like someone from a movie or a magazine, and he looked at me, just me, not the twins. For the first time in my life, someone saw me as a separate person, as Amelia, not as half of a whole. He started waiting for me after Mass, then in the town square when I went to buy thread, then at our front door with flimsy excuses we both knew were just excuses to see me. Clara watched everything from the bedroom window. I felt her eyes on my back, heavy, stuck, burning, but I pretended not to see. Only Elias, the local mail carrier, seemed to notice the shift in the air. He was a quiet man with a weary smile who had delivered mail to our farm since we were toddlers. One Tuesday, as I stood by the gate, he lingered a second too long, his hand hovering over a blue envelope. "This one's for you, Amelia," he whispered. But before I could reach out, Clara's shadow fell over us from the porch. Elias pulled back, his eyes darting between us with a flicker of pity. I didn't understand then. He saw the predator. I only saw my sister. For the first time, I had something that was just mine, and I wasn't going to let her ruin it. Thomas invited me for ice cream in the square. My heart beat so hard I thought I'd faint. I said yes before I could even think. And as I was leaving, Clara appeared at the bedroom door. "I'm coming too." I looked at her, looked at Thomas waiting outside, and for the first time in my life, I said no. A no came out of my mouth that I didn't even know existed inside me. Clara just stood there, mouth open, as if I'd slapped her. And I left, closed the door, and went to have ice cream with the man who was going to change my life for better and for worse. We dated for 8 months. 8 months of supervised dates, of secretly exchanged letters, of stolen kisses at the gate when Clara wasn't looking. I kept his letters in a sewing box with a false bottom, an heirloom from my mother. I read and reread every word before bed. I memorized every phrase, every vow of love. He said he'd take me out of that house, show me the world, make me happy. And I believed him, my God, how I believed him. On the eve of our 21st birthday, Thomas asked me to marry him. He came to the house, all dressed up, with a small package in his hand. My mother received him in the living room. Clara said she had a headache and didn't come down. He opened the box, and there was a ring, inside simple, gold, with a tiny blue stone. "Aquamarine," he said. "The color of the ocean you're going to see." I cried so hard I could barely say yes, but I did. I said yes, and for the first time, I thought life was going to be mine. Only mine. We set the wedding for 3 months later. I started embroidering my trousseau, the linens, towels, pillowcases with our interlaced initials. I worked by day on clients' sewing and embroidered my dream by night. Clara said nothing. She stayed quiet, watching with that look I already knew. But I pretended not to see. When I showed her the ring, you know what she said? "Small, isn't it?" That was all, and she went back to her room, as if I hadn't just told her I was getting married, leaving, finally going to live. At night, I dreamed of the house we'd have. A simple house, but ours, with a backyard to hang laundry, a kitchen to bake cakes, a room just for him and me. I dreamed of the children we'd have, a boy and a girl, with honey-colored eyes just like their fathers. I dreamed of the ocean he'd promised to show me, that infinite blue I only knew from postcards. And every night before bed, I'd look to the side and see Clara lying in her bed. She pretended to be asleep, but I could see her eyes shining in the dark, awake, watching me, waiting. 3 weeks before the wedding, Thomas vanished. Just like that, out of nowhere, the world went silent. I spent my mornings waiting by the gate for Elias, but for the first time in years, he wouldn't look me in the eye. He would pedal his bike past our house with a frantic pace, his usual whistle silenced. I didn't know then that Clara had already intercepted the mail, or that Elias had watched her burn Thomas's pleas in the trash barrel behind the barn. I went to Mrs. Reed's boarding house, begged for information. But the silence there was the same as the silence at my mailbox. Thomas was gone, driven away by a sickness he didn't understand and a heartbreak he didn't deserve. Elias, the mail carrier, became an unwitting accomplice, watching the fire consume our future, one blue envelope at a time. I often wonder if Elias tried to speak up during those Sunday deliveries. He would linger, his eyes searching mine for a spark of the old Amelia. But Clara was always there, a sentinel on the porch. His silence wasn't malice. It was the same fear that kept me paralyzed for 5 decades, the fear of a woman who knew how to destroy everything beautiful. 2 days later, a telegram arrived from his mother in Austin. Thomas arrived. Wedding canceled. No contact wanted. The silence left by a vanished lover is deafening, and a single telegram can shatter a lifetime of dreams. Amelia accepted this rejection as her truth for 50 years, never suspecting the hand that truly held the pen. You won't believe the cold calculation behind this disappearance as we move toward the night of their 70th birthday. In that moment, my heart shattered so completely that I had no room left for suspicion. Thomas was a decent man, and it was that very decency that killed us. He was too broken to believe I had turned him away, and I was too proud to chase a man I thought had simply stopped loving me. We were both just helpless pawns in Clara's cold, calculated game. I collapsed. There's no other word. I collapsed on the living room floor and stayed there, unable to get up, unable to understand. I sent letters to Austin, one after another, begging for an explanation, asking at least for a goodbye. They all came back unopened. The whole town found out. Poor Amelia, left at the altar. I heard the whispers at the grocery store, at church, in the square. I saw the looks of pity, and Clara by my side comforting me, saying, "I told you men are no good. Good thing you have me." I burned the trousseau in the backyard, the embroidered linens, the towels, the pillowcases with the initials that would never interlace. I made a bonfire and watched everything turn to ash. Clara watched from the window, expressionless, without a tear. I couldn't destroy the ring. I hid it in a crack in the bedroom wall, behind the wardrobe. Sometimes at night, when Clara was asleep, I'd stick my finger in the crack and touch the aquamarine stone, the ocean I'd never see, the love that had abandoned me, the life that should have been mine and never was. I never got involved with another man. 50 years, honey, 50 years believing I wasn't good enough, that there was something wrong with me, that Thomas had realized it in time and fled before making the mistake of marrying me. I developed a hole in my chest that never closed, a certainty that I didn't deserve to be loved, that anyone who got close would end up leaving too. And Clara was there, always there, every day, every night, reminding me with every look, every silence, that I was only hers, that we'd been born together and would die together, that it was no use trying to escape. She never dated, never showed interest in any man. I asked her once, when we were already old, if she didn't miss it, if she never wanted someone. She answered with that crooked smile, "What for? I have you." And I swallowed the rest of the questions, like I always swallowed everything since we were born. We grew old together. Two old ladies stuck together, codependent, rotting in that room that never changed. Bed on the left by the window, bed on the right by the door, me sewing, her selling, me creating, her controlling until we were 70. Every anniversary of the day Thomas vanished, I cried hidden in the bathroom. I'd lock the door, turn on the shower to drown out the sound, and cry all the tears I couldn't cry in front of her. Clara made a point of mentioning Thomas on holidays, always in that mocking tone. I wonder if Thomas is still alive. I wonder if he regretted his stupidity, and I'd pretend I didn't hear, that it didn't hurt, that I'd moved on. But I hadn't moved on at all. How do you get over something you don't even understand? I stopped embroidering after Thomas left 50 years without putting thread to needle to make something beautiful. I sewed out of obligation to earn money, other people's clothes. But embroidery, that delicate work I loved, that died along with the engagement. I lost the will to create beautiful things, I'd say when someone asked. The truth was, it hurt too much. Every stitch reminded me of the interlaced initials, the burned linens, the future that turned to ash. I cried for a whole week. I can't even explain why. He'd abandoned me, disappeared without a word, left me with a hole in my chest that never closed. But knowing he'd died, that he no longer existed in this world, that I'd never have a chance to find him on the street and ask, why, that destroyed me in a different way. Clara thought it was funny. Crying over the man who dumped you. You really are a fool, Amelia. At 60, it was Clara who got sick. Severe arthritis that locked her fingers, wrists, knees. More and more dependent, more and more needing me for everything. And I cared for her, as I always cared for everyone. I gave her baths, gave her food, gave her medicine. She complained about everything, fought with me, said I was doing a poor job on purpose. I took it in silence because she was my twin, because she'd been born with me, because it was what was expected. The aquamarine ring stayed in the wall crack. Sometimes, when she slept, I'd still go there, stick my finger in, and touch the blue stone, the only thing of Thomas I had left. The 70th birthday party was our niece's idea, the daughters of our only brother, who had already passed away. They organized a celebration at the house, invited old neighbors, some distant relatives whose faces I didn't even remember. A 2-tier cake, 70 candles, a happy birthday twins banner hanging in the living room, the same living room where Thomas asked me to marry him 50 years earlier. Irony of fate. I was almost happy that day. 70 years old, still standing, still healthy, still breathing. It wasn't the life I dreamed of, but it was the life I had, and I was almost at peace with it. Clara drank too much Chardonnay. She never drank anything. Used to say alcohol was for the weak. But that night, she downed glass after glass, becoming looser, stranger. A new neighbor couple who didn't know us came over, and the woman made a comment. How beautiful. 2 sisters who never separated, A love like that is rare, Clara answered with a smile that gave me chills. Yeah, right. Rare indeed. There was something in that tone, in that look, that bothered me, but I let it go. It was our birthday. I didn't want trouble. After everyone left, we went to the bedroom, as we had for 70 years. Take off the party clothes, put on the nightgown, lie in the usual beds. Clara was still buzzed, laughing at things that weren't funny, talking more than usual. I commented more to myself than to her. 70 years sleeping by your side. It seems almost like a lie. She laughed loud, that laugh like a crow, and said, "Well, to think it almost wasn't that way." I asked what she meant by that. She looked at me, her eyes shining in a strange way, and said, "Do you really want to know? After 50 years, you want to know?" My heart raced. I didn't know what she was going to say, but my body already knew it was something bad. I sat on the edge of the bed, looking at her, and said, "Speak." She confessed she had slipped small, non-lethal doses of rat poison into Thomas's coffee for weeks. It didn't kill him, but it made him weak, paranoid, and sickly. Then, she showed him the forged letter while he was at his lowest point. Heartbroken and physically drained, he believed I saw him as a burden and fled back to Austin, where he later died in a car accident, still carrying that bitterness. And the letters I sent later, the letters that came back unopened, she intercepted them all. She got them from the mailbox before I could, burned them without me knowing. He sent letters too, several, asking for an explanation, saying he still loved me, asking what had happened. She burned them all, every single one, for months, until he finally gave up. Can you hear the sound of 50 years turning to dust? Every letter she burned was a day of my youth reduced to ash. I realized then that the greatest enemy wasn't time, it was the woman lying right next to me, smiling upon the grave of her own sister's happiness. I was frozen, unable to breathe, unable to think. 50 years. 50 years thinking he'd abandoned me, that I wasn't good enough, that there was something wrong with me. 50 years of nights crying in the bathroom, of anniversaries in mourning, of buried dreams. And it was a lie, all a lie. He loved me. He wanted to marry me. He sent letters, and she destroyed it all. She destroyed my whole life. Why? I asked. I asked with a voice that barely came out, my whole body shaking. Why, Clara? Why did you do this? And she answered, still laughing, still thinking it was funny. I couldn't let you leave me. Amelia, you're the only thing that's mine. If he took you, what would be left for me? She said it like someone talking about the weather, like a comment about something unimportant, and worst of all, she was smiling a triumphant, jagged smile that finally stripped away the mask of sisterly love. In that horrific glow of her satisfaction, the scales fell from my eyes. I didn't see my twin anymore. I saw the architect of my misery. That smile was the final blow that shattered my chains. It was the moment I realized that my silence hadn't been kindness, it had been an invitation for her cruelty. For the first time in 7 decades, the fire of self-preservation roared louder than the whispers of guilt. If you think women like me, who carried lies on their backs their whole lives without knowing, deserve to finally tell the truth, subscribe to this channel now. Because I spent 50 years in silence, thinking it was my fault. 50 years, feeling inadequate, rejected, abandoned. And it was all a lie from the person sleeping next to me. Now it's my turn to speak. Now it's my turn to be heard. I sat paralyzed on the edge of the bed, hands in my lap, looking at Clara as if she'd just spoken in a foreign language. My body wouldn't obey anymore. I couldn't get up, couldn't scream, couldn't cry. It was as if someone had flipped a switch inside me and I'd turned into a statue. And I sat there listening, unable to process that this was real. I asked about the letters I sent to Austin, one after another, begging for an explanation. She said she burned them all, every single one. She'd get them from the mailbox before me and burn them in the wood-burning stove without me knowing. I asked if he'd tried to come back, if he'd sent anything at all. She answered with that crooked smile, several times. But I handled it as if the lives of 2 people were a problem to be solved by handling it. 50 years of grief, built on a foundation of rat poison and burned letters. Clara's triumphant smile in this moment is perhaps more chilling than the crime itself. The mask has finally fallen, and now, we witness the exact second Amelia's world turns from sorrow to a cold, hard resolve. Don't go anywhere. The final act is about to begin. As if the love I felt, the love he felt, were things to be thrown in the trash because she didn't want to be alone. I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't move. I sat there with my body stiff and my head spinning. Inside, something that had been cracked for 50 years finally shattered for good. You know when you carry a cracked vase your whole life, being careful not to spill anything, and suddenly someone gives it a flick and the vase explodes into 1,000 pieces? That's what happened inside me. 50 years of cracks, of doubts, of pain I thought was my fault. And now I knew it wasn't. It never was. It was her fault. It had always been her fault. And she was there, lying in bed 3 feet away, snoring as if she hadn't just destroyed what little was left of me. My eyes landed on the crack in the wall, behind the wardrobe, where I'd kept the ring for 50 years. The aquamarine stone Thomas gave me, the color of the ocean I never saw. I thought of all the birthdays I cried hidden in the bathroom, with the shower running to drown the sound. I thought of the embroidery I stopped doing because every stitch reminded me of the interlaced initials that never existed. I thought of the ocean I dreamed of seeing, which Clara always said was nonsense, dangerous, too expensive. I thought of the nights I woke up in the dark wondering why he abandoned me, what I did wrong, why wasn't I good enough? And now I knew. He hadn't abandoned me. He was stolen from me by the person who had slept next to me for 70 years, who was born with me, who claimed to love me more than anything. He died in Austin thinking I didn't want him. He died alone, single, never knowing I spent my whole life keeping his ring in the wall, crying for him in secret, loving him until his last day. Clara didn't just kill our engagement. She killed both of us. She killed Thomas inside. She killed me inside. And she did it laughing, thinking it was her right, thinking I was her property. Clara fell asleep quickly the wine. She always fell asleep easily when she drank, her body limp, mouth open, that low snore that had annoyed me since I was a girl. I stayed awake, lying in my bed, looking at the dark ceiling. The grandfather clock in the hall struck 1, then 2, then 3, and I was there, unable to sleep, unable to think of anything else, with her words echoing in my head. I couldn't let you leave me. You're the only thing that's mine. If he took you, what would be left for me? Thing. She called me a thing. In 70 years of life, I was never a person to her. I was a thing, property, a possession. I got up slowly, without making a sound. The hardwood floor creaked, but Clara didn't wake. I went to the corner of the room, where my mother's old wardrobe stood, and reached into the crack in the wall. My fingers found the matchbox where I kept the ring. I pulled it out carefully, opened it, and there it was. 50 years kept in the dark, and the aquamarine stone still shone. I put it on my finger for the first time since Thomas gave it to me. It fit perfectly, as if time hadn't passed, as if I were still that 1-year-old girl dreaming of a wedding, the ocean, and children with honey-colored eyes. I looked at Clara sleeping, mouth open, a low snore, her face lit by the moonlight coming through the window. 70 years of looking at this face. 70 years of sleeping next to this woman. And I never saw who she really was. Or maybe I had seen and preferred not to believe it. The diary she read to the chickens, the friend she drove away with the lice lie, the blue dress she stole after pushing me against the dresser, the birthday she made me miss by pretending I was sick. All of it was a sign. All of it warned me who she was. But I didn't want to see it because she was my twin, because we were born together, because I thought she loved me in her own twisted way. The ring shone faintly in the moonlight. I looked at it, looked at Clara, and thought of Thomas. I thought of him dying in a car accident in Austin, alone, single, never having married. He died thinking I didn't love him. He died without knowing I kept his ring for 50 years, that I cried for him in secret, that I never forgot his smile, his honey-colored eyes, the fountain pen in his pocket. He died thinking I'd rejected him, and I spent my life thinking he'd abandoned me. Clara killed us both. She killed the love we had, killed the life we could have had, killed everything, and she still slept peacefully as if it were nothing. I watched Clara sleep, and for the first time I didn't see a sister. I saw a parasite that had drained my very soul. Justice was never going to knock on the door of that house, so I knew these withered hands had to go out and find it themselves. It wasn't a flash of anger, it was the weight of half a century finally breaking the floorboards. I took the pillow from my bed. I can't explain why I did it. I didn't plan it, didn't calculate, didn't think of the consequences. My body moved on its own, as if it knew what it needed to do before my head understood. I walked the 3 steps that separated my bed from Clara's. 3 steps I'd taken thousands of times in 70 years to help her when she had a nightmare, to give her medicine when she was sick, to comfort her when she asked. 3 steps I knew by heart that my feet could take in the dark without tripping. But this time was different. This time I wasn't going to help anyone. I looked at her face for a long moment. She was sleeping so peacefully, so at peace, as if she hadn't just destroyed the rest of my life with a drunken confession, as if the words she'd said had no weight. And you know what I felt looking at her? It wasn't hate, it wasn't anger, it was a strange calm, a massive emptiness, as if someone had hollowed out everything inside me and left only the essentials. I just wanted her to stop. Stop breathing, stop existing, stop being the chain that had been around my ankle my whole life. My fingers tightened on the pillow, those long, thin fingers my mother said were for a pianist. Fingers that never played piano, that spent a lifetime sewing other people's clothes, embroidering a trousseau that turned to ash, caring for a sister who destroyed me from the inside. This time, those fingers were going to do something else. They were going to play a different song, the last song Clara would ever hear. What happened in those minutes? I won't describe more than that. There are people of all ages listening to this story, and certain things don't need details. I'll only say she woke up. She struggled. She tried to scratch me with her arthritis-locked hands. But my pianist's fingers were stronger than they looked. 70 years of sewing, washing, wringing rags, carrying weight. My hands didn't shake. My hands knew what to do. And when she stopped moving, I didn't take the pillow away right then. I stayed there for a few more seconds, just to be sure, just to guarantee that this time she wouldn't trick me again. I took the pillow away slowly, looked at her face. And you know what I saw? Peace. In the suffocating silence of that room, a final choice was made, not out of hate, but for a desperate need to breathe. It's a tragic end to a 70-year bond, leaving us to wonder if justice can ever truly be found in such darkness. But Amelia's journey doesn't end in that bedroom. Her life behind bars is even more surprising than you think. For the first time in 70 years, Clara's face looked at peace, without that wrinkle of worry on her forehead, without that bitter crease at the corner of her mouth, without that strange glint in her eyes I always pretended not to see. She just looked like an old lady sleeping. An old lady who had finally stopped hurting people. I fixed her hair, just like I did when we were children, and she'd wake up from a nightmare. I ran my hand through the white strands, smoothed them on her forehead, made her look nice. I don't know why I did it. Maybe habit. Maybe because deep down I still remembered the little girl with curls who was born with me. I went back to my bed, lay down, looked at the ceiling, and fell asleep. For the first time in decades, I slept through the night without waking up, without nightmares, without starting, without that feeling that something was wrong. The aquamarine ring was still on my finger, the blue stone shining faintly in the darkness. I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel fear. I felt only a huge void where there had once been a stone I'd carried on my back for 50 years without knowing it was what was dragging me down. Now the stone was gone, and I could sleep. When I woke up, the sun was coming through the window. The same window that had lit that room for 70 years. The same light I saw every day when I opened my eyes. For a second, I forgot what had happened. For a second, I thought it was just another morning, like all the others, that I was going to get up, make coffee, call Clara to drink it with me. Then I looked at the bed next to me and remembered. She was lying there, motionless, with her hair neat just the way I left it. And I knew it hadn't been a dream. It was real. I had done what I did. I bet you won't have the courage to like this video. After all, who likes the story of an old lady who killed her own twin sister, right? Who presses the like button for a confessed killer telling prison details? But if you understood, not justified, not applauded, but understood what it's like to spend your whole life being robbed by the one who should have protected you, then press that button. I want to see who here is real. I want to see who has the courage to admit they understood why I did what I did. A silence different from all the others, a silence that was mine alone. After coffee, I went to the bedroom. I needed to see it again. I needed to confirm it wasn't a nightmare. Clara was there, in the same position, already cold, already stiff. Her skin had that strange color that death brings, half blue, half gray. Her eyes were closed, her mouth slightly open. She looked like a wax doll, a doll that 70 years ago was born with me, cried with me, slept by my side every night. I looked at her for a long time. I felt nothing, not relief, not remorse, not fear. Just that massive void that had taken over everything. I went to the living room, sat in the rocking chair that used to be my mother's, the same chair where she sat to sew, where she told us stories to help us sleep, where she died one day from poorly managed diabetes. I stayed there all morning, rocking slowly, looking at nothing. I didn't call anyone, didn't call for help, didn't do anything, just sat there rocking with the aquamarine ring shining on my finger, waiting. I don't know exactly what I was waiting for. The neighbors thought it was strange not to see us on the porch. Every day we sat there in the morning, drinking the rest of our coffee, watching the street. It was our routine. The Harrison spinsters on the porch, everyone knew us. When noon passed and we hadn't appeared, Mrs. Gable came to knock on the door. The closest neighbor, a nosy woman who always wanted to know everyone's business. She knocked once, twice, 3 times, called our names. I got up from the rocking chair and went to open it. I was still in my nightgown, still with the ring on my finger, still with the face of someone who hadn't slept right in 50 years. "Clara is dead," I said before she could ask anything. I could have lied. I suppose it would have been easy, but I was so tired of lies. I had breathed them for 70 years. I didn't confess because I feared the law. I confessed because I wanted the world to know what she had done. Living behind iron bars is far more honest than living in the grand deception of that house. You can call whoever you need to. Mrs. Gable looked at me with her mouth open, not quite understanding. Then she went to the bedroom, saw the body, and screamed. She screamed so loud the neighbors on the whole block heard. She ran out, called the police, the ambulance, the pastor, everyone she could find, and I stood there at the bedroom door, watching the chaos, feeling nothing, as if I were watching a movie, as if it weren't me. The police arrived first, 2 young deputies who barely knew what to do. Then came the ambulance, which was useless because Clara had been dead for hours. Then the sheriff, who was the son of an old family acquaintance. He knew the story of the Harrison spinsters. Everyone in town knew. He looked at me with that gaze of someone trying to understand but failing. The medical examiner checked the body, took notes, then called me aside. He said there were marks petechiae in the eyes, signs of asphyxia. He said it wasn't a natural death. He asked if I knew anything. I told him everything without hesitating, without asking for a lawyer, without making up a story. I told him about the fiancé who vanished 50 years ago, the poison in the coffee, the forged letter, the burned letters. I told him about the confession on our birthday night, the pillow, the 3 minutes that changed everything. The sheriff listened, unable to believe it. He turned white, then red, then white again. The news spread through the town in a matter of hours. Everyone was talking. Everyone had an opinion. Some said, "Poor Amelia. She was lied to her whole life." Others said, "A killer has no excuse to kill her sister." I didn't care about anyone's opinion. 50 years I'd cared what others thought. And look where it got me. They arrested me that same day, pre-trial detention, while they investigated. I spent 8 months waiting for trial in a temporary cell that smelled of mold and disinfectant. The lawyer they gave me was a public defender, a young guy who seemed more scared than I was. He tried to argue crimes of passion, years of psychological abuse, accumulated trauma. The district attorney wouldn't take it. She said it was premeditated crime, executed in cold blood, that I had time to think and chose to kill. Both versions had some truth, I guess. But only I know the real truth. And the truth is, I didn't think about anything. My body did what my head hadn't had the courage to do in 70 years. I asked to speak at the trial. The judge let me, even with the lawyer making a face. I stood up, looked at the jury, and told my story. I told them about the shared room, the diary read to chickens, the stolen blue dress, the poisoned fiancé. I told them about the nights crying in the bathroom, the anniversaries in mourning, the dreams that turned to ash. I told everything I'd kept in silence for 70 years. And when I finished, they asked if I regretted it. I answered the truth. I regret waiting 50 years. The jury was disturbed. You could see it on their faces. Some cried, others looked at me with disgust. An old lady in the first row shook her head non-stop. I don't know if out of pity or condemnation. When the judge read the sentence 22 years for first-degree murder, I felt nothing. No relief, no despair, no anger. I just accepted it, as I'd accepted so much in my life. The only question I asked was, "Can I keep the ring?" The judge looked at my hand, saw the aquamarine stone shining, and said yes. That was the only good thing about that day. Now I ask you, and I want a real answer in the comments. Do you think I was wrong to wait 50 years to know the truth? Or was I wrong to do something when I found out? What would you have done if you discovered at age 70 that the person sleeping next to you, your whole life, stole the only love you ever had? That she poisoned your fiancé, forged letters, burned the replies, destroyed your chance at happiness just because she didn't want to be alone? A life sentence handed down in a courtroom, yet Amelia had already served 50 years in a prison of Clara's making. Hearing her say she only regrets the waiting, it forces us to look at justice through a very different lens. It's a heavy question she's left us with, and your thoughts on this might surprise even yourself. Please, stay with us as we follow Amelia into the quiet halls of Chowchilla, where her new life is just beginning to unfold. Tell me, because after many years in prison, that question still visits me every night. It still lies down next to me when I close my eyes, still asks if I did right, if I did wrong, if there was another way. And I never know how to answer. I arrived at the Chowchilla prison at age 70, one of the oldest inmates to ever walk through those gates, they told me. The other prisoners looked at me with a mix of curiosity and fear. The old lady who killed her twin sister, that's what they called me in the first few months. They'd whisper when I passed, change the subject when I got close, move out of the way as if I were contagious. I didn't try to defend myself, didn't try to explain. I stayed in silence, watching, as I had my whole life. 70 years of being quiet next to Clara taught me how to survive without talking. Here in prison, that worked too. The first month was the hardest, not because of the crime, not because of the guilt, not because of fear of what would happen to me. It was the loneliness. It sounds crazy, right? I had just killed the person who had been suffocating me for 70 years, and what hit me hardest was the loneliness. It was that I realized, there, in that cold cell, that I'd spent my whole life without ever truly being alone. Since I was born, Clara was by my side in the crib, in the room, at school, in the house, in everything. I never knew what it was like to exist without another person breathing nearby. And suddenly I was alone, completely alone, for the first time in 70 years. I cried in my first shower, not out of sadness, not out of regret. I cried out of relief. The lukewarm water falling on my body, the smell of cheap soap, the noise of the other inmates talking loud outside, and me, alone under the shower, crying all the tears I hadn't cried in front of Clara my whole life. I cried for Thomas, for the ring hidden in the wall, for the burned embroideries, for the ocean I never saw. I cried for the 2 one-year-old girl who believed she was going to be happy and spent 50 years thinking it was her fault she wasn't. I cried until the water was cut and the guard knocked on the door, telling me to get out. The guards thought I'd die soon. A 70-year-old woman, thin, hunched, with a face like someone who'd already given up. They made bets, I found out later. How long will the old lady last? A year? 6 months? Well, I proved them wrong. Here I am, 8 years later, still standing, still breathing, still telling my story. In the 5th year, I had a minor stroke, one of those that leaves a mark but doesn't kill. My right hand was left with this tremor, you see. I can't sew as finely as before, but I still sew. I still do what needs to be done. I still insist on living. I discovered that I knew how to survive on my own, something I'd never tested before because I never had the chance. Clara was always there, telling me what to do, controlling the dollars, deciding where we would and wouldn't go. I thought I couldn't do anything without her. I thought I was weak, dependent, incapable, and I found out it was a lie she planted in my head to keep me trapped. I know how to cook, how to clean, how to sew, how to manage, how to live with difficult people, how to be quiet when needed, how to speak when it's time. I knew all those things. I just didn't know I knew them. When the other prisoners found out I sewed, the relationship changed. In prison, having a useful skill is currency. I started fixing uniforms, doing alterations, and sewing on buttons. The younger inmates started looking for me. One needed a hem, another tore her shirt in a fight, another wanted to tighten her pants. I didn't charge anything, didn't ask for money or favors. I just asked them to tell me stories from outside, from the world I didn't know, from the life I didn't live. And they told me. They sat next to me while I sewed and talked about kids, husbands, streets, parties, everything that happened outside these walls. Little by little, I became Miss Amelia, then Grandma Amelia. The younger ones started calling me that with respect, almost with affection. I, who was never a mother, who never had grandkids, suddenly had a whole bunch of prison grandkids, lost girls, many of them who came in young and will leave old. Girls who made mistakes, who got involved with the wrong people, who didn't have a chance to choose differently. I look at them and think, would I be like them if I'd been born in another place, in another family, without Clara stuck to me? Would I have lost my way too? The administration let me set up a sewing corner in the common room. Nothing fancy. Just a table with needles, thread, blunt-tipped scissors, and scraps that find their way there. I spend my afternoons sewing and teaching whoever wants to learn. Some learn fast. Others have no patience, but at least they leave here knowing how to do something, knowing their hands are meant for creating, not just for destroying. That's what I tell them. These hands of yours can make something beautiful. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. There's a girl here, Haley, who became like a real granddaughter to me, well, a prison one. She arrived in her early 20s, covered in tattoos, a tough face, a reputation for being a troublemaker. Nobody wanted to go near her, but I saw something in her that reminded me of myself, a sadness hidden behind the anger, a loneliness she disguised as bravery. I started making conversation, offering needle and thread, telling stories from the old days. Little by little, she softened. Today, she's the one who takes care of me most in here. She helps me up when my back locks, saves food for me when I miss mealtime. She defends me when some newcomer wants to show off. Haley didn't just protect me. She reminded me that I was worthy of protection. One afternoon, she brought me a small, smuggled wildflower from the yard. "For you, Grandma," she whispered. Looking at that fragile petal, I realized that beauty could still find me, even in the harshest places. Haley was the daughter I never had, a reminder that the universe provides light when you finally decide to step out of the shadows. She was the one who taught me that my story didn't end with a crime, but began with the truth. It was to Haley that I told the whole story. One night of insomnia, the two of us sitting in the hallway because it was too hot to stay in the cell. She asked why I was locked up, and I told her everything from the beginning. The shared room, the diary read to chickens, Thomas, the poison, the 50 years of lies, the pillow. She listened in silence, without interrupting, without making a face of disgust. When I finished, she was quiet for a while, then said, "My grandma did less and took more. Grandma, you were just strong." I don't know if it was a compliment or a judgment, but it was the first time someone told me I was strong and not weak, and that changed something inside me. I share a cell with 2 other inmates, one for robbery, another for trafficking. Stories that don't interest me much because each carries her own. The cell is small, stuffy, smells of sweat and pine sol, but I got the corner bed, near the window. For the first time in my life, I chose the side of the bed. 70 years sleeping on the left, because Clara wanted the right. 70 years without questioning. Here, I chose. I said I wanted the window, and nobody argued. It seems like a small thing, right? But for me, it was a massive victory. The first choice that was only mine in almost a century of life. The routine here is strict. Wake up at 6, breakfast at 7, work or activity until lunch, a nap, dinner at 5, cell at 8. It feels like prison because it is. But you know what's funny? I like the predictability. I like knowing what's going to happen. Not having surprises, not having someone change their mood for no reason and ruin the day. With Clara, you never knew. She'd wake up in a good mood, and suddenly, something I said or did would change everything. Here, there's none of that. Here, Everything is the same, every day the same, and I feel freer in this sameness than I did for 70 years at home. I keep the aquamarine ring in a matchbox under my mattress. I can't wear it during the day. The guards don't let us have jewelry. But every night before bed, I take it out of the box and put it on my finger. I look at the blue stone, shining faintly in the light from the window, and I say softly, "Good night, Thomas." It's my ritual, my prayer, my way of remembering that once someone loved me for real, someone who was stolen from me, but who still exists in the sparkle of this stone that is the color of the ocean I never saw. There's a small mirror in the cell, hanging on the wall by a crooked nail. Every morning, I look at it at my old face, my hollow eyes, my wrinkles, my spots, and I think, this is me, without Clara, just me. I need to do this every day to remember who I am, because 70 years of looking at her face, sleeping next to her, living in her shadow made me forget that I existed separately. Now I know. Now I remember. Every morning in the mirror, I recognize myself, and that is more than I had in a lifetime in that house. I breathe better here than I did for 70 years in that house. It sounds like a lie, sounds like madness, but it's the truth. The cell is cramped, the air is heavy, the heat is too much in the summer, but I breathe deep, and clean air comes in. Air that is only mine. Air that nobody is going to steal from me. Nobody is going to dirty with lies. Nobody is going to make me feel like I don't deserve it. The freedom I have inside these walls is greater than the prison I had outside. It's a profound irony when iron bars feel more like a sanctuary than your own home. Amelia finally chose her side of the bed, a small victory that speaks volumes about the life she left behind. As we reach the final chapters of her story, ask yourself, what would you do for a single breath of truth? Stay with us for the conclusion of this incredible journey. Do not pity me for being in prison. Pity those who are sitting in their own homes, unable to be themselves. Sometimes, you have to lose everything: your name, your status, your life, just to trade it for one breath that is truly yours, a breath that no one else can steal. Because outside, the prison was invisible, it was made of guilt, fear, and dependency. Here, at least, I know where the bars are. If you know a woman who has spent her life carrying someone on her back, a sister, mother, friend, husband, whoever it is, someone who has sucked her light for years and years, share this story with her. Not for her to do what I did. For the love of God, I don't want to give anyone ideas. But so she knows she's not alone, that there's a 7-8-year-old woman in a prison in California who understands exactly what it's like to be erased by the one who should love you, who knows what it's like to wake up every day feeling like you are less, that you don't deserve, that you exist only to serve another person. Share it with her. Who knows? Maybe it helps someone wake up before it's too late. I don't regret what I did. I've tried to regret it. I swear I have. On nights of insomnia, at the church services the prison organizes, in talks with the psychologist who shows up once a month, I tried to feel remorse, guilt, regret, but I can't. What I feel is something else. I regret the 50 years. I regret waiting so long, believing the lie, not investigating, not going after Thomas when he vanished. If I'd known sooner, maybe I'd have found another way. Maybe I'd have sued her, exposed her, left, and never looked back. But at 70 years old, with the truth laughing in my face, with her lying there, mocking 50 years of my suffering, there was no turning back. There was no other way. Clara killed me first. I am absolutely sure of that. She killed who I could have been. She killed Thomas's wife, the mother of the children we could have had, the woman who was going to see the ocean. She killed the embroiderer who created beautiful things, the friend who would have had other friends, the person who would have had her own life. She killed all that in 1966 when she put poison in the coffee and a lie in the head of the man who loved me. I spent 50 years dead inside without knowing. She just kept breathing. I only finished the job she started. Thomas died thinking I didn't love him. That is the part that hurts most. The part I will never forgive, not her, not myself, for not finding out sooner. He spent the rest of his life thinking I'd rejected him, that the letter Clara forged was the truth, that I never wanted to marry. He died single, alone, in a car accident on an Austin highway, and I spent the rest of my life thinking he'd abandoned me. that I wasn't good enough, that there was something wrong with me. Both destroyed by the same lie, both suffering because of the same person. If there is a hell, Clara is there explaining to the devil how she only wanted not to be alone, how it was her right to trap me, rob me, destroy me because I was her only thing. I hope the devil laughs in her face, just like she laughed in mine that night. And if there is a heaven, I hope Thomas knows the truth now. I hope someone has shown him that I loved him until the end, that I kept the ring hidden in the wall for 50 years, that I cried for him in secret every anniversary, that I never forgot his honey-colored eyes, his easy smile, the fountain pen in his pocket. I've learned a lot in these 8 years. I've learned that true love doesn't imprison. Those who imprison don't love, they possess. What Clara felt for me wasn't sisterly love. It was ownership. I was her property, her object, her thing, and I confused that with love my whole life because I never knew anything else. Now I know the difference. Love lets go. Let's grow. Let's be happy far away if needed. What she did was keep me in an invisible cage, clipping my wings every time I tried to fly. I learned that twin doesn't mean half. My whole life they treated me like I was half of a thing. Like without Clara I didn't exist completely. But I was always whole. I always had my dreams, my desires, my personality. I just didn't know it because they never let me find out. Now, at 78, alone in a prison cell, I finally know I am a whole person. I don't need another half. I never did. I was complete from the moment I was born. They just convinced me otherwise. I learned that it's never too late to know yourself. Even if it's in prison, even if it's at 70, even if it's after doing something, there's no coming back from. I've known myself more in here than I did in 70 years outside. I discovered I like silence. I like choosing. I like a predictable routine. I discovered I can survive alone, that I can make friends, that I can teach what I've learned. I discovered I am strong, much stronger than Clara ever made me believe. I found out who Amelia is without Clara, and I liked what I found. I learned that the worst kind of prison is the one you don't even know you're in. This prison here has walls, bars, armed guards at the gate. I know exactly where I am trapped. But the prison I lived in for 70 years had none of that. It was made of obligation, habit, guilt, and the fear of being alone. It was a prison I couldn't even see, one I thought was normal life. And that's why I say many people out there are trapped, just like I was, trapped in relationships that drain them, in families that suffocate them, in situations that seem to have no exit, and they don't even know it's a prison. They think it's love, duty, just the way it has to be. I finally saw the ocean. Not for real, of course. A guard brought an old magazine with a photo of a beach, one of those beautiful beaches with blue water and white sand. I looked at that photo and cried. 70 years of dreaming of seeing the ocean. And the closest I got was a photo in a tattered magazine. I cut out the photo and taped it to the cell wall right above my bed. Now I look at it every day before I sleep. It's not the same thing. I know. You can't feel the wind, the salt, the sand on your feet. But at least now I can look at it without asking permission, without hearing that it's nonsense, expensive, or dangerous. I've started writing letters to Thomas. I know he won't read them. I know he's been dead for almost 30 years. But I write anyway. I tell him what happened. I tell him about the lie, the poison, the burned letters. I tell him I loved him my whole life, that I kept the ring, that I never forgot. I apologize for not finding out sooner, for believing he abandoned me. And I keep the letters in the same matchbox where the ring stays. I want someone to find them when I die. I want the world to know the truth, for someone to read them and understand what happened to us. Last month, a small, battered package arrived at the prison. It was from Elias's daughter. Inside was his old mail ledger and a final, shaky note written before he passed away. Amelia, it read. I saw the smoke from the barrel every morning. I saw her face. I've carried your stolen letters in my heart for 50 years. Please, forgive a coward. He had kept a list of every date a letter from Austin arrived and was destroyed. Seeing those dates, May 12th, June 4th, August 20th, was like feeling Thomas's heartbeat again. Elias couldn't give me my life back, but he gave me the proof that I was loved. He was the silent witness to my burial, and now, he is the witness to my resurrection. I am 78 years old, 8 years served, 14 to go. If I survive, I'll leave here at 92. I don't know if I'll survive. I don't know if I want to. But I'm not in a hurry to die either. My health is decent for my age, except for the tremor in my hand and a backache that never goes away. The guards have given up betting on how long I'll last. They've seen that this old lady is stubborn, that she won't go easily. And I stay, day after day, counting the years, looking at the photo of the ocean, writing letters to someone who's gone. If I get out, I want to see the real ocean, even if only once, even if from a distance, in a wheelchair, with someone pushing me on the sand. I want to see that infinite blue Thomas promised to show me. I want to put my feet in the salt water, feel the wind on my face, hear the sound of the waves, and think of him. Think that we should have done this together 60 years ago, that we should have married, had kids, grown old watching the sea from the porch of some little beach house. If I get out, I'm going even if it's the last thing I do. If I don't, I want someone to tell this story right. Not the version in the newspapers that painted me as a monster and Clara as a victim, but the real version with everything that happened from the start. That's why I'm telling it to you now, so it stays on the record, so someone knows, so Clara doesn't win in history the way she won in life. Because she always won, she always got the dress, always got the control. Not this time. This time, the last word is mine. Our nieces visit me once a year. They come embarrassed, not knowing what to say, looking at the clock, waiting for the time to pass. I don't hold a grudge. They didn't know what their mother did, what Clara did. Nobody knew. It was a secret kept in a closed room, in a 70-year silence. They thought we were two eccentric old ladies who chose to stay together, that it was sisterly love. It wasn't. It never was. But how would they know? I didn't even know myself until that night. Every night before bed, I put the ring on my finger and look at the ceiling. The same ritual as always, the same blue stone shining faintly. The same good night? Thomas whispered softly. My cellmates have gotten used to it. They don't even ask anymore. It's Grandma Amelia's thing, they say. Leave her be. And I stay there, looking at the ring, thinking of the young man with honey-colored eyes who asked me to marry him 60 years ago. The young man who was poisoned, tricked, stolen from me. The young man I loved and will love until my last day. Clara said she couldn't let me go because I was the only thing she had. But I wasn't a thing. I was a person. It took me 70 years to learn that, and I learned it the hardest way possible. I learned that being a person means having the right to be only yours, to choose your bed, your path, your life, to love who you want to love and leave when you need to. Nobody is the property of anyone. Nobody is half of anyone. I was Amelia. I always was. It just took me 70 years to find out. Today, as I look at my thin hands that have finally stopped trembling, I feel a sense of freedom that I hadn't touched in 70 years. These iron bars may confine my body, but they have liberated my soul from the chains of deceit and control. The past was a blur of burned letters and a love stolen in the shadows, but my present consists of peaceful sleep, no longer haunted by the suffocating breath of possession beside me. I have learned that humans possess a miraculous resilience. No matter how long the heart is suppressed, it still knows how to bloom once it finds the truth. Now, every stitch I sew is no longer meant to mend old wounds, but to weave together a complete and whole self. Thank you for listening to the very end of this turbulent, true story of my life. If you empathize with the journey of a 7-8-year-old woman finding herself again, please subscribe to the channel so we can continue to share the most authentic corners of human existence.